Hey, this is Mr. Goldschmidt, and today I'm going to talk you through getting the Launchpads connected to your computer and working on Mixcraft. So right now I have my Launchpad plugged in and I have Mixcraft loaded up. I'm going to select 10 audio tracks for my settings. I'm going to turn on the performance panel and I want 10 sets inside of my performance panel. After I get that, I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. It's going to load Mixcraft in for me. The big box I see here is what's called the performance panel. We can turn that off and just see our normal timeline, or we can turn it back on again and see all these little boxes inside the performance panel. All those little boxes correspond with the 8x8 grid that is on the Launchpad. So we have 8 tracks across, we have 8 tracks down. Now there are more sets on here as well, and we'll talk about how we can use those. But first let's get our Launchpad hooked up. Your Launchpad should have a red light down at the bottom, but if it does not, that means you're probably not hooked up correctly. So we're going to go ahead and hit that little settings wheel up here. We're going to go down to control surfaces. That's what our Launchpad is. Make sure that your first drop down is Launchpad. Then we want the input to be Launchpad Mini, and then the output to be Launchpad Mini. After that, if you hit OK and you watch your Launchpad, it should light up and everything will be good to go. The next step is to start adding in some sounds. So I'm going to go ahead down to my loop library. I'm going to sort these by song kit, and I'm going to add in some sounds. I'm going to go to maybe the synth rock. I want to add in a bass drum loop. I'm going to go ahead and change my tempo. I'm going to add this drum beat here. And when I add in my tracks, my sounds, my loops, I only want to add in, for each track you can only have one sound playing at a time. So I could have this bass sound or this drum sound. I can't have them both at the play at the same time. However, vertically, everything in, if you see where it says set 1, I can have all of these tracks in set 1 play at a time. I could also have this drum play while this electric sound plays. But I can't have two things in the same track play. But yes, you can have multiple things in different sets playing at the same time. So I'm going to go ahead and add in a couple different sounds here. Add in some more guitar riff here. Add in some hi-hat synths. And just a couple other sounds here, just kind of as a sample. Now, if I look at my Launchpad, I can see that there are lit up buttons where I have put loops, and if I press those buttons, they will play. Now you'll see a little waiting. If I press another one, it kind of waits for a moment to play until the time is right. So the preset default is that your buttons will cue in at the appropriate time, typically at the beginning of a measure. Now, there are some different settings we can do. If we right click on one of your loops, we have, the first thing is cue. If I want the particular loop to load in instantly, I'm going to select instant. If I want it to wait for the next bar, I can click 1 bar. If I want it to wait 2 measures or more, I can select those as well. Right now I have it on project level, and project level will go with what you have set for the entire box. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that at 1 bar. Then we have what's called trigger mode. Re-trigger means that it's going to, anytime that you press that button over and over again, it'll re-trigger and it'll replay the sound. Trigger once means that it'll only play that one time, and trigger in sync is transition in sync means it'll wait until the appropriate time. One shot means that it'll only play that sound once and it won't re-loop. We typically use one shots for things like a drum, just a kick sound, a boom. And that allows you to finger drum and be able to play different beats just with your hands. The last setting is performance control. The default is down, meaning that once you press that button down, it'll play that sound until you press another button down. You can't press the same button down and expect it to stop. You'll have to select a different loop in order for that loop to stop inside of that track. Down up means that once you press it down and then you hold it down, the sound will continue to play. Once you let go of that button, the sound will stop. And then finally we have toggle, which means we can click the button to go on and we can click the button to go off. Right now I'm going to select toggle and I'm going to highlight all of these loops and right click and so they will all go to toggle right now. So then I can select any loop, I turn that loop on, and I press the button again and it will go off. Now, at the very top of your Launchpad, you have some circles labeled 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. If I hit that circle, it will play all the circle over set 1. It will play all the loops in set 1 at the same time. And it'll do that for set 2 as well. This blue box around the outside of our loops. As I said before, we have an 8x8 grid on our Launchpad, but if you look on the side of your Launchpad, there should be 2 yellow lit up buttons if you have 10 tracks. The top button allows us to scroll up and down. The top 2 buttons, we scroll up and down. They're labeled A and B on the Launchpad, and then the ones labeled C and D allow us to scroll left and right, and you'll actually see the loops slide around on the Launchpad, and they'll disappear. If I move the blue box over here, I won't have any loops showing on my Launchpad, but I can scroll back and get those ones visible on there. So that allows you to get more sets, more sounds loaded into your Launchpad. You could have another 8 tracks over here, or 8 sets over here, and be able to access that many more sounds. After we have our Launchpad set up and working correctly, it's now time to do some recording. Up at the top of your performance panel, we have an add, so we can add sets. We have solo and we have ARM. I'm going to go ahead and hit ARM because we want to record using our performance panel. Now all I need to do is, if I go down to, I'm going to delete that there. If we go down to the bottom and hit the record button, we are ready to go. So I'm going to set my metronome really quick here. I'm going to have a count in of 1 measure, and then we'll get started doing some recording. Now, as I changed my different loops throughout, I can go back and see that they have recorded. And that is how the Launchpad allows you to set up your loops, control the Launchpad, and finally do your recording.